Hello and welcome to our viewers from around the globe. I'm Corey Turner and I'll be hosting today's webcast from the International Progressive MS Alliance. I'm joining today from Toronto, Canada, where I'm the president of Spicer's Canada, a paper packaging and graphic arts distribution company. More importantly, I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS in 2005 and then secondary progressive MS in 2008. I've been part of the Alliance's People Affected by MS Engagement Coordination Team since 2019 and played a key part in developing the Alliance's principles of patient engagement in MS research, which we will be discussing today. I also serve as an MS governor and member of the board for MS Canada. Before I introduce you to today's panelists, I'd like to recognize our webcast sponsors and share some information about the International Progressive MS Alliance. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Sanofi and Genentech, for their generous support and for making today's webcast possible. This webcast is brought to you by the International Progressive MS Alliance, which is an unprecedented global collaboration of 19 MS organizations, researchers, clinicians, pharmaceutical companies, and people affected with progressive MS, working together to address the unmet needs of people affected by progressive MS. To date, the Alliance has committed more than 60 million euros to research networks and discovery projects, all with the aim of accelerating the development of new treatments, better and faster clinical trials, and well-being strategies for people living with the progressive MS. Now, let's meet the panelists joining us today. Dr. Gray, let's start with you.
Hi there, Corey. Hi, I'm Emma Gray. It's a real pleasure to join this webcast today. This is such an important aspect of research. It's something I really feel really passionate about, actually. So I'm Director of Research at the UK MS Society, and I also have the fun job of being part of the scientific staff of the International Progressive MS Alliance, which is a great bit of my job, actually. So at the UK MS Society, we work alongside people affected by MS what we try and do is co-design everything from our research strategy and our programme to supporting people to provide a review of our grant applications, to designing innovative clinical trials to ensure they're feasible and acceptable for people. An example of that, which we can talk about later, is Octopus, which is the first multi-arm, multi-stage trial for MS and specifically testing treatments for progressive MS. It's lovely to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Dr. Pluchino.
Thanks very much, Corey. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stefano Pluchino, and I'm a clinical professor of Joint Immunology and honorary consultant in neurology within the Department of Neuroscience at the University of Cambridge. And I'm here to represent an international consortium of investigators who have just received funding for the development of a clinical trial which will be testing a novel stem cell therapy in people with progressive MS.
Wonderful to have you. And finally, joining us is Marie Vaillant.
Hello, I'm Marie Vaillant, and I live in Ottawa, Canada, the nation's capital. I'm a member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Peoples with MS Engagement Team, and I'm also on the Scientific Steering Committee. And I was also a part of the team that developed with Corey the principles of patient engagement in MS research, and I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
Wonderful to have all three of you joining us today. So let's get into the discussion. It's going to focus on how people with progressive MS are participating in research, not just in clinical trial participation, but from study design all the way through the process of publishing these research results. Marie, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Alliance's principles of patient engagement and why our team took on this task of creating these guidelines?
Thanks, Corey. As you said, patient engagement has always been a key element of the Alliance. The ECT team struck a group in December 2022 because this was something we wanted to formalize in order to amplify the voice and roles of people affected by MS, a key strategy for the Alliance. We put together a team to develop the principles, and they were officially adopted in January 2024. The four main principles are partnership with focus, mutual respect, inclusivity, accommodation, and support. Partnership with focus means many things. For example, with this research, solve a problem I have. Many of us deal with fatigue and cognitive issues that need to be addressed. Mutual respect means that my lived experience is sought, heard, understood, and incorporated into the decision-making during the research process. Inclusivity means that researchers make a concerted effort to include a representative population of patients. This includes gender, age, and ethnicity. Last but not least, access, accommodation, and support means that a plan of support will be in place. This could mean limiting clinic visits, emotional and social support, and providing technology as required.
I just want everybody to know that the viewers that are watching this, that these principles will be found on the Progressive MS Alliance website. We'll post a link at the end of the webcast for everybody to see these for themselves. Marie, back to you. As someone living with progressive MS, why is it important that the patients are involved within the full process, beyond just participating in a trial?
As part of our work, we have the opportunity to review all the project proposals that the Alliance receives for funding. These proposals are written in plain language by the researchers so that we, as non-scientists, are able to understand them. As a group, we discuss proposals at length with staff to provide clarification and insight. We then score the projects individually, and a composite score is derived to reflect the group's feedback. At the proposal stage, we review the design of the project to determine if the research will reflect what we see as research priorities. What may be a priority for a researcher is not necessarily what those of us that are living with MS may view as a priority. We also review the proposals to determine if people affected by MS were involved in the development of the proposal. We also consider how will the results be communicated once the study is completed. Often we see proposals for studies that are just not realistic for someone living with progressive MS to fully participate in. For example, they may require frequent clinic visits or intrusive procedures that people may not want to undertake. Top of my head, I'm thinking spinal taps. It's important that investigators take the patient perspective and why they're capable of and willing to do into account when they're designing their research.
Having gone through this project together, is there an excitement about where this is going and the positive impact this could have for people affected by MS for the long term?
I have been involved in research since I was diagnosed 30 years ago, and I've seen the research landscape changed over that 30 years. And I think the principles are really critical to changing the way that we do business on a going forward basis, to really have people affected by MS involved in the process from the very beginning when we're developing the proposals and determining it being a priority all the way through the process, and finally with the communication of the results. So often we don't hear the results of the trials. We don't know what happened, and getting involved in research is a very, very time-consuming and a serious commitment. So I think it's important to close the loop. Our objective in developing these principles is that they would form the basis and the foundation of all the research that we undertake and serve as a model for other research going on into other diseases across the world.
I agree. I'm very excited, and I'm very appreciative of the level of respect and thoughtfulness that this really captures for those affected by MS moving forward. So I share your sentiment. Dr. Gray, you're not only a member of the Alliance scientific staff, but you're also very involved in the Patient and Public Involvement, or PPI, at the MS Society in the UK. You lead the engagement with people affected by MS in a large study being conducted in the UK and in Australia called Octopus. With all of this work, can you give us your take on the importance of patient engagement policies in research?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So, as Marie says, we need to include people to get that realistic and relevant perspective. But, I really believe that, we actually have a moral and ethical duty actually to include people with MS in the research progress. There's a really good phrase that I'm not sure if mainly used in the UK when you talk about involving people with health conditions and in medical research, is that there should be no research about me without me. And I think that's a kind of really powerful position for us. You know, fundamentally, the perspectives of people with MS actually increase the quality of the research itself. It's not just about realism and it being, it actually makes it more feasible. Therefore, it's more deliverable and you get clearer results. And that's so important to making breakthroughs. So we shouldn't underestimate it. It's not just about representation. It actually improves the quality, and that's been proven. And it makes you solve the problems that are really important to people with MS, not, as we've spoken about, just important to the research community. And this is evident now. So in the UK, government funders, the UK MS Society, and many other international organisations, including the Alliance, recognise how important this part of research is. And it's now a requirement for all research proposals that come in, that they must include the perspectives of people living with MS from the beginning of any trial or any study. And, and that we hope that will only kind of get better. And then you mentioned octopus. This is a really nice example of not just irrelevance of a study, but actually improving the quality and deliverability of a trial. So octopus, as I mentioned, is a trial for progressive MS. And what we were trying to do is find treatments that could protect nerves from damage or improve myelin repair for people with progressive MS. And we had this long debate within the scientific community at the beginning about, which people with MS should be in a trial like this. We wanted to utilise this novel trial design, but should you take these treatments and give them to people earlier on in their condition, maybe relapsing MS, because have you got a better chance of them working? And people with MS really said to us, yes, that might be scientifically more plausible, but what about us? We don't have any treatments. You have a duty, to treat this unmet need. So the science is kind of your problem, but you need to focus on this population. And so that's why we then made it a really broad and inclusive trial of people with progressive MS, wide range of disability. And it's really important to get that viewpoint actually at the beginning. Other things that people with MS were really helpful to do in this was they actually identified the treatments that went into octopus. And we kind of, asked them to score, treatments based on, people actually are willing to take more risk than scientists or the clinicians often think. Because, the people take more risk if they could, their disability could be slowed. They're actually more open to things than we make the assumptions of. So actually getting that perspective really helpful, because then people are going to stick to the trial. They're going to take the treatments that they say they'll take. The design, there's lots of work going on to actually do how you recruited people, how you kept people in the trial. We were using the UK MS register to recruit people. People can actually put themselves forward. And what that's done means that we've actually recruited ahead of schedule, which in clinical trials never happens. It just doesn't happen. And people are not dropping out because it's a trial designed by them for them. So I can't emphasize enough how actually it does improve the quality and deliverability of a clinical study like octopus.
That's wonderful. And what I sort of get excited about is the fact that, MS is this condition that has this vast variability. And if we broaden the engagement of participants, we're going to get better quality, to your point, better quality outcomes. But do you also think that we will, by virtue of this approach, we will actually get more people engaged and participating in the process?
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's been treatment revolutions for relapsing MS, and we want to see that in progressive MS, but also we want people to, you might get a diagnosis or you might go on to have progressive MS, but you also want to have the chance to be part of research as part of your healthcare. That's how we want to end up, really, is it? So that becomes part of your MS journey, is that you get a chance to be part of a trial, a study, a steering group, a clinical trial, whatever that might be. That's so important for people's, for their outcomes. Even if the trials end up not showing it there's a new drug that works, just being part of research. I mean, I'm sure you, Marie, know that, benefit that has to you just for participating. So I think that's what we should strive for everyone.
I think it's very exciting. Dr. Pulkino, you're putting all of this into practice. You were recently awarded funding as part of the Alliance's Experimental Medicine Trial Awards. Congratulations. And applicants for this award were required to work with people living with MS. Right from the beginning of the project. Can you tell us a little bit about how you engage people affected by MS for this initial planning of the research?
Yeah, thanks very much, Corey. I think it's important that I re-emphasize what Marie and Emma just said, and how important and how much we care the way we integrate patient and public in our research from the very, very beginning. Specifically in the Experimental Medicine Development Award that we have just been granted by the Alliance, which is called RESTORE. The RESTORE project, which is a preparation project for a more ambitious clinical trial focused on advancing treatment for progressive MS. But I think I need to clarify first that having a patient involved in our research from the very, very beginning is not just a nice to have, but it is a cornerstone of modern research and something we truly embrace in the consortium. There is, in fact, as Mary and Emma just said, a general agreement and consensus in the community that engaging with patients right from the early stages of our research, especially translational research, is absolutely indispensable. In fact, patient insight and experience might directly inform the specific research questions we ask, the methodologies we apply, and the way we explore our questions and hypotheses. So the award we've been just granted applies to RESTORE, which is a development award, and the award aims to develop a very robust experimental medicine trial platform in preparation to the closer phase 2b trial, which is a clinical trial investigating neural stem cell transplantation as a new advanced cell therapy for people with progressive MS. And importantly, to ensure that the trial we aim at is truly patient-centered, because that's the mission that we have embraced, we have established a fully dedicated patient and public involvement research group, which is specifically asked to actively contribute to the development and the execution of our research, ensuring that our work, our efforts all align with the realities of those living with MS. And given that we are recruiting, or we are planning to recruit people for experimental medicine, it is important to integrate the real patient perspective at very early stage and every stage of our research, with the aim of ensuring that the interventions we are proposing, the outcomes we are looking for in the final clinical trial are really relevant and they are beneficial for people with MS. And this includes considering factors which might be trivial for a physician or a translation scientist, like promise or excessive promise all by stem cell treatment, the way the treatment is delivered to patients, and how many times we have to deliver the treatment to the patient, the degree of disability we have to consider when putting down on paper inclusion, exclusion criteria, potential comorbidities, and the very broad inclusion of patients with different levels of disability. And in the RESTORE consortium, we are in full agreement that involving patients on a very early stage of our research will have the unique opportunity to enhance the ethical foundation of our research while ensuring we meet the actual needs of those affected by MS. And to achieve this, we are enlisting a specific group of 4 individuals with diverse experience in MS. And these individuals will have the major role and responsibility to help us shaping the way we design the final clinical trial, to provide us with feedback on how procedures are perceived by patients and navigated by patients, and also to refine our early protocols in a way that will be not only scientifically sound, but also considerate of the patient's experience. For example, I'll give you examples, discussing the potential and value in such an experimental medicine trial of introducing a placebo group and ensuring the design of the trial is acceptable and understandable. There is also another aspect which is important to consider when engaging with patients and public from the very, very beginning, which is the way we communicate and disseminate our research. And our communication dissemination strategies need to be effective and accessible, and our PPI group will have the key role of helping us reshaping the way we communicate our science. You know, science sometimes can be very, very difficult to understand. It will help us translating complex research concept of language into everyday understanding, ensuring that what we would like to deliver is appreciated, is understood, and is accessible to the wider MS community. So I think now it's clear, after having heard to Marie, Emma, and also myself, that the voice of people with MS are not only crucial, but indispensable from the beginning to the end of our very long research journey. And the whole ReStore consortium, which I have the privilege to represent today, is fully committed to listening and learning from these voices, recognizing that patient perspective will strengthen our work and will enhance the impact of our findings. So I think that all together with the advisory board and with patients and major stakeholders of our research, we have good chances to make our exploration in experimental medicine meaningful, relevant, and increasing the chances of improving the life of those living with progressive MS.
I'm really appreciative of your passion in describing the project, Stefano. I really appreciate that, Dr. Placchino. I mean, you go into it with this sincere approach. Was there anything unexpected that you ended up incorporating into the project, based on the feedback from those affected by MS?
But we are still at the beginning, so we haven't yet started practically. It was a fantastic and highly rewarding exercise to engage with potential candidates and receiving always a very enthusiastic feedback, both locally at the level of our MS clinic as well as nationally and international. So I can't wait to start working actively with patients and colleagues and mentors.
And I assume it's motivating that this could be an example for others.
That's of course our hope. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Maria, I want to dive into some of the principles of patient engagement even further, specifically the first principle, which is partnership with focus. Within that, there is a recommendation that patients serve as co-authors in scientific paper development and publication. Would you just please talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Thanks, Corey. The principle is all about collaboration and partnership between the research team and the study participants, and making sure that the results are transparent and accessible. This means that I, as a layperson, will be able to understand the results of the research and its impact for someone living with MS. It's important that people living with MS are able to also contribute to the end result of the research they participate in, to make sure it's understandable to those who could benefit from the research. Recently, a paper was published by the Italian MS Society, AISM, which included members of the people affected by MS engagement coordination team as co-authors, and it calls for reducing barriers that make it difficult for people living with MS to contribute to the final publications.
Similar to my last question, do you get excited that this can serve as a great example, even beyond what we're scoping here in terms of progressive MS?
I think so. I think, once again, this is a significant paradigm shift. Scientific journals are very, very concerned about non-scientific people contributing. So I think this is, once again, groundbreaking, fairly revolutionary in the field of scientific papers, and it's an excellent start. And it shows the importance of involving people with MS, especially with the scientific paper being the end result of the research study. It's a good final point and something that we certainly want to aspire to, that will not be as groundbreaking, that will be just form of become the practice that's incorporated in all research. So the paper that was published is a first step of what I hope to be is something that happens not as an anomaly, as part of the normal procedure in the publication of scientific papers on a going forward basis.
Dr. Placchino, do you plan to include the people living with MS who are involved in the development of your trial all the way through to the process of publishing your research when it's complete?
Corey, absolutely. The trial example is just a case study, but we have started already quite extensively to engage with patients and to share with patients our work, and the commitment towards patient and public involvement does not end with neither with the development award nor with a full clinical trial. We have a clear vision, and we see people living with MS who are involved by any means in our research as integral partners throughout the entire process. including, as you said, for example, as being co-authors in the publication of our research findings. And the plans that we have developed still to be put on paper is that before we finalize any publication, there will be full access to the findings of the study to our PPI research group to gather the real perspective of the patients on, especially on not only on the true authentic nature of the results, but on the potential implication of the results and how this should be communicated. And depending on the level of the contribution of the individual members of the PPI research group, we will be very open to explore the possibility of being co-authors, or at minimum to provide a prominent acknowledgement for their invaluable feedback, contribution, and support. We will also work, as I said before, with the PPI research group to develop a very focused strategy of communication and dissemination using plain language summaries, ideally making them easily understandable and accessible to the wider MS community, and including and considering also different formats and different channels to disseminate our findings. The PPI research group will also be consulted on the best way to disseminate some of the most critical aspects of research to reach the different audiences which matter most, including, of course, people with MS, but also healthcare professionals, policymakers, etc. And just to give you another example of the process which started way before putting together the plan for the Restore Development Award, one of our last papers, which was published in a very high impact factor journal and competed for the cover image. The cover image was made by an individual affected by MS, who had full access to the paper and full access to the raw data that were part of that scientific manuscript. So in overall, we believe that involving people living with MS in the publication process is valuable, is essential for ensuring that the research is relevant, it is impactful, it is stakeholder-centered, because that's one of the principles of highly translational science, and it is also ethically sound. So the PPI research group has a big responsibility to monitor the way we do our science. And their insight will help us communicating our findings in a way that is accurate, it is meaningful, and it is also open and able to reach the whole MS community.
As somebody that's had MS for 20 years, I've got a real appreciation for the consideration all of this represents. So I really appreciate it. Dr. Gray, specifically, are there any other principles of patient engagement that you believe are key to research in MS?
Yeah, I mean, there is another one, and I think it's one that I don't think we've completely solved yet, and something that we'll keep needing to work on in the future. So the one around I think access, accommodation, and support, I think, is super important. So, this includes all the things we can do to remove barriers to engagement and involvement. So paying for travel, accommodation, also providing, emotional support, social support, so people actually really have a positive experience of taking part in research. Language can be a barrier. It's so important that we do this globally, actually, for the Alliance. We do need to make research more inclusive. We need to have a diverse range of people involved. We're starting to kind of make good strides here, but there are other barriers, I guess, for people participating, for being involved. These include, things like people might have caring responsibilities. There might be barriers around ethnicity and, previous experience of the medical professional and lack of trust. There might be socioeconomic barriers. You might not be able to afford to take time off work to take part in a focus group, So we really do need to consider these things going forward. We're making great progress, and I think we'll get there. But I mean, these are broader societal issues. It doesn't just affect MS research. But I think in the MS community, we need to make sure we're doing our part to try and break down barriers, because we've all know the benefits of involving people. But let's just try and make sure we're involving kind of the most diverse group that we can.
Amen to that. Yeah. So look, I thank you for that, Dr. Gray, and I really want to thank everybody for what I thought has been a really terrific, spirited discussion with a lot of passion throughout it. It's been a real honor to be part of this discussion, but the Alliance is truly aiming to put people living with progressive MS at the forefront of MS research, and what you guys have shared has been a really great example of why this is being taken serious. For more information, for those watching, on the principles of progressive MS, please visit the link you will see on the screen. We'll be sure to share the link in any follow-up to those of you watching the webcast as well. This webcast has been brought again by the International